Hello dear students. In the previous class, we completed the first chapter of your syllabus, Vital Statistics. From today onwards, I am starting with your next chapter, Index Numbers. Basically, economic students have already studied this chapter, but for others, it is new concept. You might have studied in newspaper or you might have heard in news that price of any goods has increased by 20% or decreased by 10% or so. So they are nothing but index numbers. And also you might have heard about Sensex, Nifty, etc. They are all index numbers only. Then what is actually index number is? Index numbers are defined as statistical devices designed to measure the relative changes in the level of a phenomenon with respect to time, geographical location, or other characteristic such as income, profession, etc. So basically, index numbers is a measure by which we'll find out the relative changes with respect to time. How the price or the quantity or the value of an item or goods is going to change from one time period to other time period. So here there will be two time period, one is known as base year and the other one known as current year. So basically base year means the year which we are comparing to, means we are taking that as a reference, and current year means the year which we are comparing, means how it has changed currently. So that year is known as current year. So I hope you have understood what is index number. Uh, if we take an example, suppose in the early 2019 the gold price was about 2800 or 2900. Now currently the gold price has increased to 4200. So there is an increase of almost more than 1000 in the span of 1 year. So here we are comparing to the year 2019. So 2019 will become base year and we are comparing it to 2020. So this 2020 will become current year and the item or goods that we have considered is gold. So basically here we can measure the relative changes of gold with respect to time. How the price has changed, we can able to measure. So that is what known as index number is. We'll actually call this index number as economic barometer. What is this barometer? Barometer is actually a device which measures atmospheric pressure. So similarly, using index number, we'll be able to measure the pressure in the economic and other business behavior or business activity of a country. So that is why index numbers are called as economic barometer. Then based on the number of items that we have considered, index numbers can be divided into two, or it can be classified into two. The first one is simple index number. Simple index number means here only single item behavior or variation is studied. Like I gave you the example of gold, right? There we are studying only gold behavior or the variation of price of gold. So it is a simple index number. Then composite index number means if we have to study the changes in the average number of items, like more than one items, then we'll call that as composite index numbers. So these are the two types of index number based on the number of items being studied. Then we have few relative values, like exactly three relative values, and all these three relative values are actually simple index number, because here these relative values are calculated item wise. Index number means if we have to study the changes in the average number of items, like more than one items, then we'll call that as composite index numbers. So these are the two types of index number based on the number of items being studied. Then we have few relative values, like exactly three relative values, and all these three relative values are actually simple index number, because here these relative values are calculated item wise. So we have three relative values. First one is price relative, second one is quantity relative, the third one is value relative. Then what is price relative? Price relative is the price in the current year expressed as the percentage of the price in the base year. So basically the price of the current year is expressed as a percentage of price in the current year. In the same example that we took, the gold example, P1 would be the price in 2020, which is 4,200, let us consider. Then price in the base year, that is price in the year 2019, let us consider 2,800. Then price relative would be 4,200 divided by 2,800 into 100. So that will give price relative P. Similarly, we have quantity relative. Quantity relative is quantity in the current year expressed as the percentage of the quantity in the base year. The formula is quantity relative Q is equal to small letter q1 by q0 into 100. Here q1 represents quantity in the current year, q0 represents quantity in the base year, and that is expressed as percentage. Then thirdly, we have value relative. Actually, value is nothing but the product of price and quantity. So therefore, value relative is value in the current year expressed as percentage of the value in the base year. The formula is V1 by V0 into 100. I told you the value is actually the product of price and quantity. Therefore, V1 can be replaced as P1 into Q1, and V0 can be replaced as P0 into Q0. So this is the formula of value relative. These are the three relative values. The next concept is uses of index numbers. We actually have many applications of index number, but they are all mainly in the economic activities only. So the first application or uses of index number is we can uh, reduces the size of the data, and also we will be able to do the comparative study of different items, like how the prices changed among two items or more than two items, etc. The next application is that using index number we'll be able to predict the future change of any item. Like we'll be able to study the trends and tendencies, how the price of any item is going to change, whether it is going to increase or it is going to decrease or so. Next, index numbers helps in measuring purchasing power of money and also deflation. Purchasing power of money means it is the financial capacity to purchase some goods, or for some particular amount how much quantity of goods we can purchase, that is known as purchasing power. The next use of index numbers are it helps in measuring the purchasing power of money and also deflation. So, purchasing power of money means it is the financial ability to purchase something, or in a simple words, for some amount or for a particular amount, how much quantity of goods that we can purchase, we can measure it using index numbers. The next uses are index numbers measure change in cost of living of different groups of people. Cost of living refers to the cost associated in their daily living, how much they are spending for their day-to-day living. That is known as cost of living index, and that will be different for different group of people, like for middle class, for poor, or for rich, it varies, and that we can measure using index numbers. And finally, index numbers are majorly used by the government in order to frame new policies, or in order to decide or fix bank rates, or to fix the allowance to government employees, and for many other reasons. Next, the characteristics of index numbers. The first characteristic is that it is a special type of averages. And secondly, they are expressed in ratios, but for comparison purpose, they are expressed in percentages. You can recall price relative formula, where the formula is P1 by P naught into 100. So here P1 by P naught is actually the ratio, and that ratio is multiplied by 100 in order to express it as percentage. Then index numbers study the effect of factors that cannot be measured directly. Like using index number, we can particularly study the effect of factors like price, quantity, then value, etc. How the price is going to affect, how the value or the quantity is going to affect on some goods or on economy. We can measure it directly using index number. Then lastly, index numbers facilitates comparison. So these are the characteristics of index numbers. Then we have limitations of index numbers. The first limitation of index number is that Akka, we have few limitations of index numbers. They are generally index numbers are based on the sample data. Like all the values we have calculated is for the sample data. That is why they are not the accurate value, but they are only approximate indicators. And secondly, we have many steps in the construction of index numbers, which we'll discuss in the further classes. and in this each stage there is a chance of error being introduced. So this is the second limit of index number. The third one is that we'll consider the factors like price, quantity and the value of the items, and we'll totally ignore the quality of the product, which is also important, but it is ignored in case of construction of index numbers. The fourth limitations is that, like other statistical techniques, these index numbers can also be misused by taking their desired values. Next, as customs, traditions and habits of people vary from time to time, it is difficult to assign proper weights to various items. Like for example, if you consider the goods like rice and wheat, in South India, rice is used more than wheat. So like this, in the different region or different people have different habits, traditions and customs. So it is very difficult to assign the proper weights. And the last limitations is that we have many formula to construct index numbers, and different formula gives different results. So these are the limitations of index numbers. Thank you.